of Journalism from the Taras Shevchenko University. And now let me mention a little bit our topic, which is Nord Stream 2 and energy security in Europe, especially Central and Eastern Europe. And we will talk about this important issue with Svetlana. Let me proceed to a series of questions. So as we are observing the Nord Stream 2 being at the last, let's say, stage of finalization and conclusion, why do you think Russia decided to, let's put it straight, bypass Ukraine and Poland, building this very expensive Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipeline? I would like just to mention that the total cost of the two natural gas pipelines is more than 20 billion US dollars, or approximately more than 17 billion euros. So where these projects come from?
Well, it seems to me that Russian energy policy is something similar to what Soviet Union was doing with the language policy in the region. The language was an instrument to extend its imperialistic ideas and its influence. This is how Russia, Soviet Union at that point, Moscow, was keeping the countries, the former republics of the Soviet Union, in its backyard, so to say, keeping them as satellites. It seems to me that after the collapse of Soviet Union, Moscow decided that energy infrastructure and energy projects will be one of those instruments, or very similar instruments. That's why we observe that Kremlin was building those pipelines, not only Nord Stream 2 that we are talking about right now, but there is also Nord Stream 1, and there is also a Turkish pipeline, and there is also pipelines to China. And by the way, not all of these projects are profitable. Moreover, some experts say that Russia invests a lot of money, but these projects are economically not viable. So the question is then, why? Why one country would like to invest so much money, especially if its economy suffers and people suffering on many of the levels? But the question is, the answer to this question is clear, because this is the instrument for Russia, for Kremlin, to extend its hybrid war, hybrid aggression against its neighbors that do not accept the authoritarianism, the violence of human rights and corruption that exists in Russia, and that Ukraine counteracted or stood against so vividly, so strongly in 2014. So that's why in 2015 the decision was made, and Nord Stream 2 has been started, deterring Ukraine and deterring other countries like Poland, like your country, Tomasz, in particular. It has to be said that, Ukrainian transit is the only alternative to Russian monopoly to transit the gas to the European consumers, because all other pipelines Russians have either interest in, or they are owners or co-owners of those pipelines. So our approach is that if European Union really cares about competition, about playing level field for all of the players in the energy market, it has to be taken into consideration. It has to be appreciated that Ukrainian transit route is the alternative to the only monopoly that Russia has.
Yes, thank you very much, Svetlana. When we take a look at the combined capacity of Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, it's massive, right? It's more than 110 billion cubic meters per year of the capacity. Do you think that Nord Stream 2 will be operational this year or soon?
Well, good question. You're absolutely right that we do expect that it's going to be finished quite soon. My expectation is that They will try to finish it by the 24th of August. And if you ask me why, because it is the Independence Day in Ukraine. Moreover, it's not just an Independence Day, it's also the 30th anniversary of our independence. And we know that Putin likes to be symbolical, and he may try to finish the pipeline and announce it, particularly on this day, just to send the message to the Ukrainians that this is our gift to your independence. I wouldn't be surprised. But to finish the pipeline and to make it operational are quite two different things. Because to make it operational, the pipeline, the Nord Stream 2, has to be certified. And here is the thin ice, I would say, where Putin is standing on. And we do hope that Germany is not going to help Putin to violate the European rules and go against the third energy package that at the moment obliges the pipeline to meet all kind of standards and all kind of principles that are there in the European legislation at the moment. I can go into the details, what are they, a little bit later on. But the thing is that we see at the moment that Russians has approximately, if I'm not mistaken, 4 lawsuits in the courts of different jurisdictions in Germany and European Union, trying to contest the idea that they have to comply with those rules. So they're trying to avoid the application of the European rules for the Nord Stream 2. And this is where Ukraine is standing very strongly, together with Poland, by the way, who just recently, and I absolutely congratulate the National Polish Gas and Oil Company, which just filed the request to the German energy regulator that they want to participate in the procedure of the certification of the Nord Stream 2. Absolutely right. If we want the rules to be applied, let's make sure that we participate in it. So we believe that this certification process might be problematic because Russians want to avoid it, and Ukrainians and Poland at the moment, and some other European countries, together with the European Commission, by the way, and many European parliamentarians insist that those rules should be applied to the Nord Stream 2. So this certification process can be part of the argue, and we may see that the making it operational can be quite delayed.
Yes, thank you very much. I think it's a very good point regarding the future steps that could be taken regarding Nord Stream 2 and EU legislation. So this 1,200 kilometer pipeline will be finished this year probably. Why does Nord Stream 2 mean so much for Ukraine and in its energy security? If you could just say, I know we mentioned it a little bit, but why it's so important to Ukraine's energy security?
This is a very good question, Thomas. Thank you for that. And the answer is that we believe that Ukrainian gas system was kind of a deterrent for further Russian aggression on Ukrainian territory. Because in a way, Russia depends on Ukraine at the moment. They want to supply European consumers with their gas. First of all, they need money. Second of all, they want to portray themselves as a reliable partner of supplying the gas, right? So they need to transit this gas. And unless they have another route that will have enough capacity to transit enough gas in those volumes that European consumers demand or want, right? They cannot really mess up with Ukrainian pipeline or with Ukrainian territory. Also, Ukrainian pipeline makes Europe dependent on us, because Europe does care to have gas and to have heating in the winter for their people. So in a way, this gas transportation system was keeping the energy balance and was this, if you want, a security shield for further Putin's aggression into Ukrainian territory. As soon as he doesn't need it, and as soon as Europeans can get their gas through another channels, we understand that it makes Ukraine more vulnerable. And by the way, let me remind you, we of course observed this story about the American sanctions, right? Last year, American Congress adopted a number of the pieces of the legislation and imposed the sanctions on those parties that participate in the development of the Nord Stream 2. The main argument of why they applied those sanctions and why the Congress bipartisan and bicameral support was provided for those sanctions, because the security argument was the key for them. It was taken in the context of all other misdoings or malign hybrid aggression, if you want, that Putin is exercising, not just in Ukraine, but in Poland, if you want, in EU, in France, in Germany, in US including. So that would be the answer. This pipeline is not just money, it's not just gas, but first of all, it's a security shield, it's a security argument.
Yes, correct. And I remember one of the experts and authors from National Interest, I think Marco Marsili was his name. He mentioned that this might be considered as a kind of energy warfare, and it falls under the category of hybrid threats you mentioned. So building these energy capabilities, which are used not only economically, but also to against political goals, it might be considered in a context of national security also. And this is what I would like to ask you about. Is Nord Stream 2 a threat not only to energy security of Ukraine, but also to your national security, considering the context of the Crimea and still tense situations at Ukrainians' borders? I think Mr. Marsili mentioned that the Nord Stream 2 lowers the threshold of potential interventions in Ukraine, military ones.
This is a very good point. I like this formula that you mentioned as a threshold, and I absolutely agree. But let me add a couple of other arguments. First of all, we provide Russians with more resources that they happily, invest into, like violations of human rights and, of course, interventions into different national elections through propaganda, through fake news, through all kind of special operations. We help Russians encourage Putin to act aggressively with his own citizens, like he did with Navalny, when he is not shy to poison his own Russian citizens. Yeah. So I'm talking about this political significance, and it also has to be taken into account that when Europeans, Germany in particular, says, okay, we're going to deal with Putin. We're going to make this deal because economically it's good for us, for our country. But then we send the message to Putin himself and to Russian society in particular that, well, yes, there were a lot of wrong things. Putin started the war, he is poisoning his citizens, but when it comes to economic interest, it has to be put aside. So I think it also a strong aspect, important aspect, that the security has to be looked through, because it gives additional ways for Putin to meddle into the not just Ukrainian security issues, but European security issues. Another argument that I wanted to add, and it has been outlined by one of the Ukrainian experts, his name is Mikhailo Gonchar. He paid attention that Russians already thinking about increasing their military infrastructure in Baltic Sea, because as you've said correctly, they have this 1,000 kilometers of pipeline laying on the bottom of the Baltic Sea. And their argument is that we need to protect that, we need to take care of that, so we'll have more resources there. So our argument is that it gives Putin a leverage to militarize the Baltic Sea. And we've seen of how Putin behaved himself in the Black Sea, in Azov Sea recently, in Ukraine. So I think we have to expect also more danger coming from this particular element. And final argument here, talking about the security, once again, not just Ukraine, but European security. As I've said in the very beginning, Ukrainian pipeline is the only alternative to Russian monopoly. So by neutralizing Ukrainian transit, but taking it away out of energy market, Gazprom receives 100%, like a jackpot, of controlling the deliveries of the gas to Europe. And Europe itself is becoming vulnerable to the wishes and goodwill of Mr. Putin. So we can expect that if something is wrong, like in case of Ukraine, right, that Ukraine chosen not Mr. Putin's umbrella or warm hug, but European integration and Euro-Atlantic integration, he made everything possible to undermine our sovereignty and territorial integrity. So I think that it also shouldn't be taken out of the picture.
Yes, thank you very much for this information. And I think now we would like to move to Germany. Germany policy towards energy security in EU and Europe. So we know what Russia thinks and what is energy policy of Russia. But when it comes to Germany, do you think Germany investing in Nord Stream 2 is it a responsible policy regarding European Union, Europe's energy security? What do you think?
Well, I'll start with the position that Germany is our strategic partner for Ukraine. Germany was very active in helping to apply sanctions against Russia and to fight for European unity in this direction. And I think that Merkel also was one of the leaders that kept these sanctions intact, enforced, for all these long 7 years, despite the fact that Russians involved a lot of money and political resources and all other leverages have been used to convince other European countries to act otherwise. So also Germany, of course, involved in our Normandy format negotiations with regards to Donbass and Crimea, of course, and we appreciate those efforts that have been paid. But when it comes to Nord Stream 2, here where we deeply and radically disagree with our partners. And I think that not only us, not only Ukraine, but also many other countries in EU. Basically, the thing is that Nord Stream 2 is dividing Europe. And if you look at the latest 4 resolutions of the European Parliament, they have been voted with a strong urge to the European Commission to use its powers to stop the Nord Stream 2 because it's not in the interests of the European Union. So I may say that political elites of the European Union doesn't support the continuation of this project. But at this point, we know that there is Germany's decision to support it. We also know that Merkel, in the very beginning, didn't want to accept and acknowledge that it's a geopolitical project. Angela Merkel was saying that it's an economic project, but later on, of course, last year especially, there was a huge pressure, not only on the international level from Americans and, of course, Ukraine and Poland and other countries, but Germany, internally in Germany itself. And you can see that even members of CDU, of Merkel's party, had a very strong position against the project. And finally, she acknowledged that, yes, it's not just economic project, and we should see that there is also a political purpose. But when it comes to good, a common good, a collective good for the European Union, I don't think that it's a good project. I think that it divides Europe, as I've said, politically, but it also makes Europe more vulnerable. Let me remind in this context the latest decision of the European Court of Justice that had a hearing, had a decision on a different pipeline called Opal. As we know, there was the initial, so a little bit of a background for those who are not very well informed. So Gazprom wanted to use more than 50% of the capacity of that pipeline. However, European rules prohibits to one side to use more than 50% because it's considered to be a monopoly, and it deteriorates basically the competition and diversification. So at some point, Poland went to European Court of Justice, and 2 years later, European Court of Justice stood with Poland and reminded Germany, Gazprom, of course, but all the rest of the Europe, that there is a fundamental principle. It's called solidarity. This principle was the founding principle for establishing of the European Union itself, and is not just a word in the founding treaty of the European Union. But this is the principle that should be that should be applied in all of the live processes, including building the gas infrastructure in Europe, and it should be respected and exercised. So by saying that, I'm trying to say that when we talk about the damage to the European Union coming from the Nord Stream 2, it's not just a political debate. We can see that even judicial system, right? European Court of Justice stood together with Poland in the case of Nord Stream 2 and prohibited Gazprom to execute its monopoly further.
Yes, thank you very much, Svetlana. You mentioned that Nord Stream 2 cannot be considered only as a business project, and it's of course true. However, how German-Russia relations, trade relations and economic relations influence Berlin's, let's say, strive to finalize this pipeline? Can we consider this economic ties between Berlin and Moscow an important factor, maybe even the most important? I would like to know what's your take on this.
That's a very good question, and maybe it goes even deeper than economic relations. I think there is a historical background for those relations. We know very well that after the World War II, there is a concept in Germany that Russia was the biggest victim of the World War II. However, of course, it's not quite right, because then we know very well that Belarusians were the first country who suffered most of all in terms of people's loss. Then it was Ukraine, then it was Russia. But nevertheless, Russia somehow inherited this Soviet Union heritage, right, as a winner of the World War II, but also as a victim of the World War II. So it kind of created a new system, a new paradigm, if you want, of the relationship between Germany and Russia. And for many decades, there were efforts to build the relationship on all kinds of levels: political level, economic level, business level, cultural level, expert level, and so on. If you look, there are a lot of experts and analytical centers that cooperate on different levels, unlike, for example, Ukraine. So we know that Russia and Germany have very much in common. And of course, we see that there is a lot of Russian money is working in Germany. We also see it, like, let's judge by those people that participate in these projects. Gerhard Schröder, right, is a former chancellor who, couple of weeks later, after he finished his career as the prime minister of Germany, he went to serve to gas interests of Russia, which is, in my mind, is humiliating for a political figure like that. But obviously, he used all his connections and political resources to make sure that Nord Stream 2 and then first Nord Stream 1 and then Nord Stream 2 are operational. And of course, we cannot underestimate this political influence that Gerhard Schröder brought to Putin, or sold to Putin, if you want. That how much that played a role in this process. But you're absolutely right. Of course, business connections and money, they decide a lot. However, not everything, right? And as it happened with Ukraine in 2014, I think there were a lot of political elites here in Ukraine that were bribed and corrupted by Putin. Putin offered Yanukovych, former president of Ukraine, $3 billion, just for free, not as a loan, but just, take it and live as you wish, do what you want. But Ukrainian people disagreed with that, because we saw a completely different destiny. So, well, I'm telling that because principles matter, and I believe, and now we are coming back to this certification process, that it's not enough for just a very strong and powerful country to pursue its economic goal. The European Union, it's also a community of principles and values and rules, and we expect that they will be respected.
Yes, that's right. I mean, I remember that one fact that we have to have in mind is that Germany is very effective when it comes to introducing its policy. I remember at one of the conferences on energy recently, an expert mentioned that Nord Stream was initiated by social democratic government of Gerhard Schröder, and it has been finished by conservative, let's say, Christian Democrats of Angela Merkel. So I think we should just take a look at how effective policy is introduced. But at the same time, EU was able to block South Stream, right, a few years ago. And it was a success of increasing energy security of the community. So you are perfectly right, Svetlana, that it can be done, and when we treat this issue with principles in mind, we can do the right thing. I would like to ask about staying in this German policy towards Nord Stream 2. Do you think that Berlin do not considers Russia as a threat to its national security anymore, or somehow?
Well, first of all, I think that there are different forces in Germany itself, right? And I presume that Angela Merkel knows Putin very well and very much informed of what Putin was doing in Ukraine, of how he annexed Crimea, how he occupied Donbass, what is he doing here on our territory, how Putin intervened elections processes, in particular in Berlin, how Putin was realizing all kind of campaigns against European institutions. So there is, I think, there is no precondition, or there is no precondition to think even that Merkel is not informed, or she doesn't, she underestimates Putin's roles in all these latest geopolitical developments. However, I think that somehow these things are divided. The understanding of who Putin is and what is he doing in his country with his neighbors and abroad, and the economic interest of German business in particular, and German country as a whole. I think that in the end, Angela Merkel is also a politician. She's a chancellor. They have their own party. They have voters. There are a lot of business lobby that are working in those areas that where they will benefit from the Nord Stream 2 when it's going to be functioning, right? So we can't just ignore those facts. We understand that these decisions are not taken in vacuum. But here, this is exactly why I underline that Germany also is a member of the European Union. And the third energy package says very clearly that all the pipelines have to go through this unbundling process because in accordance with the European rules, it is prohibited for one company, or a group of company to control the production of the gas and the transit of the gas, because it creates the natural monopoly that can be dangerous for European Union. It also decreases the competition on the energy market. As well as, by the way, another principles of the European rule is this so-called third-party access to the pipeline. At the moment, we see that none of those principles have been applied. And still, we believe that Germany may be ready to certify the Nord Stream 2 and give its certification of the independent system operator, which will be against the European rule. So I'm coming back to this European rules so often just to make my point that Germany also doesn't exist in this geopolitical vacuum, that there are other members of the European Union, and the European Union also is built on certain rules. So we expect that this battle is going to continue. As we say in Ukraine with the Nord Stream 2, maybe the battle has been lost, but the war is not lost yet.
Yes, thank you very much, Svetlana. We have a question from our viewers, maybe just as a kind of add-on to our discussion. And he asks about Nabucco project and discontinuation of this project, and what could you say about Ukrainian policy towards Nabucco? Or do you think it was influencing somehow the activities surrounding this Nabucco project?
Sorry, what is influencing what?
I mean, what could you say about Ukrainian policy and actions involving this Nabucco project, Nabucco gas pipeline?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I have enough expertise to comment on Nabucco project.
Yes, okay. Let's come back to Germany, and very interesting development is its energy policy and climate policy of EU. And in this light of in the context of EU goals 2030 and the approach to climate change and renewable energy, how would you see the German involvement in Nord Stream 2? Can we say that it's in let's say in line with climate goals? Because we know that a lot of natural gas leakage comes from traditional pipelines operated by the Russian side. And I think the cost of rebuilding the faulty pipelines was estimated at around 6 billion euros. So, do you think that this involvement in Nord Stream 2 can be seen as an obstacle for realization of climate policy of the EU?
Well, I definitely see that Nord Stream 2 runs against the Green Deal and climate policy that have been declared by the European Union. Because basically, Russians, together with European companies, digged up additional billions, more than 10 billions of euro into the Baltic Sea, you know. However, they could have been easily using the Ukrainian gas transportation system. At the moment, for our viewers to understand, Ukraine transits approximately 40 BCM per year. However, before we have been transiting much more, and our capacity is 3 times bigger. So we can increase the transit of the Russian gas up to 120 BCM per year. So, and you've said it already, Tomasz, yourself, that Nord Stream 2 capacity is 55 BCM. So very simple mathematics, you know. We could have transited this gas without any problems to European consumers through our transit system. And there was no need to waste those 11 billions of euro, other than, of course, to create a geopolitical pressure on Ukraine, Poland, and other countries that now detoured by this pipeline. And of course, it also very much valuable, these arguments, in the context of the Green Deal discussion, because all those money could have been spent on the transformation of the energy infrastructure in Europe in general, in Germany in particular. Of course, we believe that especially after Green Deal has been proclaimed, it's difficult to explain to the European voters of why, at the same time, so much money are spent additionally on the energy resources, that carbohydrates, basically, energy resources. And additionally, by the way, many ecologists say that there is a lot of methane emissions that are happening with this pipeline, Nord Stream 2. Much bigger, by the way, than emissions that is happening with Ukrainian transit gas transportation system. So you're absolutely right. I mean, whatever topic or whatever sphere we touch upon here in this conversation, but also not here in any conversations, it's difficult to find arguments of why actually Europe would agree to have the Nord Stream 2.
Yes, thank you very much, Svetlana. I think that we should get back to this important question of the next actions within the European Union focused on increasing energy security. And in this sense, I know that you mentioned a little bit about it, but do you think that German policy regarding this energy security of EU and Europe can change somehow, or can we expect some modifications of this policy in the foreseeable future in the context of US-German relations, perhaps, and I don't know, maybe development of more LNG capabilities by Germany in the future?
It's a very good question, Tomasz, and of course, such potential is there. First of all, we expect parliamentary elections in Germany already in September this year, and there will be new coalition, there will be new government, there will be new parliament, and we see that Green Party has much bigger chances now to form this coalition and to be part of the government. And we've read their political policy statement in their political program, that they stated very clearly that if they part of the government, they will try to stop the Nord Stream 2 as a project, because they don't believe in it, that it brings any good to Germany and to the European Union. And it just helps to strengthen Putin's position in his aggressive policies. So this potential of change in the German policy is coming not only from outside, but from inside, first of all, coming from the results of the parliamentary elections. But let's not judge ahead. Let's wait. Let's see the results. Obviously, we'll see it pretty soon. Now, when it comes to the external potential of expecting changes in German policy, of course, we have to refer to this latest statement that has been signed by Germany and US in relation to Ukraine's security, where Germany, together with US, took some commitments and obligations in front of Ukraine to guarantee its transit status and its security. However, we have to say that this statement is pretty vague. First of all, it doesn't have any legal force. It's not a treaty. So any new government coming to Germany can just ignore it or can change it, right? But also the statement itself, it doesn't provide a very clear vision of what exactly will be done if, for example, Putin will decide to use Nord Stream 2 as a weapon, as an energy weapon against Ukraine and the European Union. So Germany stated that they will try to use some leverages on the national and international level, but it hasn't been precised what exactly the leverages are. So what I'm saying that, of course, American as a second side, the signatory of this statement, also will participate in this discussion. You know that President Zelensky, Ukrainian president, will travel to US very soon. The visit will happen on the 30th of August. And this issue will be definitely on the agenda between the two presidents. So we expect to hear more concrete things, I hope, after that visit. So I think that American role will be important here, coming from this particular political commitment that have been taken by signing this statement. And lastly, of course, coming back to European Union, I mean, of course, European Commission will have to verify the certification process or the decisions of the German energy regulator. By the law, European Commission has to approve the decision of the national regulator. And this is, I think, where the role of European Commission will be extremely important, and European Parliament, of course.
Thank you very much, Svetlana. When it comes to US policy towards Nord Stream 2, we know that there is quite significant opposition in the US Congress towards White House policy regarding this issue. Do you think it might affect somehow Biden's administration future steps in relations with Berlin?
Very good point. You're absolutely right. I think that Congress hasn't been convinced that administration did a right thing by applying the national security waivers to the sanctions that have been voted. And if you look at the Congress decisions, by the way, during the last year, we can see that Congress actually voted in that or another form 4 times for these sanctions against Nord Stream 2. If I remember correct, it was like PISA, PISCA, CAATSA, and NDAA. This is the names of the 4 pieces of the legislation that have been supported in American Congress. And we mentioned it already, that it was bipartisan support. It was not just Republicans or Democrats. Both parties, majority of those members, supported the legislation and sanctioning the construction of the Nord Stream 2. So I think that Congress is quite disappointed from what I can see. With the decisions of the administration. Moreover, we can see that after this statement that has been signed between Germany and US, the media coverage is extremely negative. I think that I have never seen such, well, since the beginning of the American administration, I think it's the biggest negative coverage they received on the geopolitical arena. And we also see that many congressmen went public by judging or giving a negative assessment of this statement that US signed with Germany, including high-profile, high-level Democrat congressmen. Like, let me just mention the latest letter that have been signed by Bob Menendez, who is the head of the Foreign Policy Committee in the Senate, who went publicly with a statement, with the letter that was signed also with other heads of the foreign committees of European parliaments, including Ukraine, by the way, with very strong position against Nord Stream 2. And of course, I think that it's a huge pressure on Biden administration because his partners, his friends, his people that he personally knows and respect, saying that, Mr. President, this decision is not quite good for the purposes that US was pursuing for a long time.
Yes, thank you very much, Svetlana. And just a quick question from our viewers. What would be the perfect outcome of German elections, according to you? Do you have any favorite political leaders?
Well, it's very ungrateful exercise to predict the results of the elections. We in Ukraine have learned that lesson, you know, that all the predictions can turn out to be a completely different reality. But one of the things and one of the new thing we expect, it's of course the coming of Green Party into the coalition and them participating in forming the government. This is completely new for Germany, for their latest governments. We didn't at this point. They have pretty big support. That's we know for sure that they will be there. But who is going to be the party coalition? Who's going to be the chancellor? Who will take that lead? This is impossible to say at the moment.
Yes, thank you very much for your views. And now we would like to focus on two last questions regarding European Union and Ukraine's aspiration. When I had a chance to be in Batumi conference, I met briefly your president, Mr. Zelensky, you mentioned, but I was impressed by his determination in pursuing Ukraine's Euro-Atlantic aspirations. How do you assess the cooperation of Kiev with Moldova and Georgia in this trio, which is most advanced in integration, let's say, efforts towards EU? What do you think about perspectives for speeding up the integration process?
Yes, very, very good question. You know that this partnership has been formed within this framework, which is called Eastern Partnership. It was founded by Sweden and Poland, by the way. Thank you so much. It was at the stage when it was not clear where Ukraine is moving forward, right? So this framework was created to make sure that 6 countries, in particular Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine, has special support from the European Union to develop its European integration and receive certain incentives and certain particular attention from the European Union. But you know, at the moment, like 10 years later, after the Eastern Partnership was formed, we see that 3 countries like Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova went much further than the rest, than Belarus, than Azerbaijan, and then Armenia. And Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia signed the association agreements with the European Union. We received visa-free regimes with the European Union. We proclaimed the wish and the goal, the strategic goal, to join the European Union. And this is what differs us from the rest of the company. So this is why we believe that this new partnership, and we call it Eastern Partnership Plus, has to receive a new political framework from the European Union. I would say that Eastern Partnership exhausted itself. It's achieved the goals that have been established, and it provided a huge progress for our countries. But at the moment, we need a new perspective. We need new level of cooperation with the European Union between these three countries and EU. So I, of course, congratulate President Zelensky and his colleagues from Moldova and Georgia to move into that direction, because I believe that this is the way to continue.
Yes, thank you very much, Svetlana. And the last question will be about Free Sea Initiative. What's Ukraine's perspective on this project? Although we know that it's difficult to speed up this initiative of 12 EU countries, there are some voices saying that there might be a good opportunity in the future to extend this initiative for countries outside of the EU, like Ukraine. What's your thought about it?
Yes. Well, Ukraine is not part of the Three Initiative project, but Ukraine wants to join the Three Initiative projects, and there were, I know, requests filed to those founders of the Three Initiative projects. So we hope that that it will be considered, and we will be able to join the partnership. This partnership is very much concentrated, focused on the development of the infrastructure and different business projects between the countries. And I think that it's also one of the initiatives that can even help us to mitigate those risks and threats coming from the Nord Stream 2.
Thank you very much, Svetlana. I think our time is running out, so let me conclude the meeting by saying that this is a very important issue, like we observed in our discussion. I think not only for energy security in Europe, but it also interconnects with national security issues and also economic interests of certain countries. So. Ladies and gentlemen, it was an honor to host this meeting for you, and thank you very much, Svetlana. Svetlana Zalishuk was our special guest today. Thank you very much, Svetlana.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and we would like to thank very much our viewers and listeners. And please stay with us, follow our webpage and social media. We are preparing for you special reports every month and a lot of good, realistic and reliable content. So please stay with us, and thank you very much, and have a good evening. See you in another Warsaw Institute event.